Hey, deserving listeners, some of you sent me this video to watch and react to. I have no idea what it is, so let's watch and see.
Sat down many times trying to do this. It's been very hard. I want to start off by saying, I just want to say thank you guys so much for your support and for giving me time. I wanted to share what I went through with Sienna and my side of the story.
Okay, so it's Jack Wright, and the title is What Sienna Mae Did to Me.
With Sienna and my side of the story. This all started when my friend came out with a tweet.
Okay, so Jack's friend Mason said, Jack and James have been my best friends since kindergarten. I struggle with seeing a girl getting praised after telling my best friend to kill himself and sexually assaulting him numerous times after he set boundaries and then repeatedly wonder why he doesn't like you back. She also has a history of verbally abusing people in high school and in LA. She prioritizes the growth of her platform rather than the positive message she represents herself as. Followers should not be an excuse to get away with abuse. Jack's friend is accusing Sienna of, some pretty harsh things.
Worried about me. She actually witnessed a bunch of times what Sienna did to me. After Mason's tweet, their family reached out to our family, told Mason to take down his tweet, and he did. We wanted to settle it offline. Our families and our lawyers got together. My statement was,
while I love sharing my life with all of you, some parts are deeply personal, and I have been hesitant to share for my own emotional and mental well-being. But I will say this, sexual assault is a serious matter that has real consequences. Mason and James' only intention was to protect me with the truth, and I really value their enormous support through this extremely difficult time. I truly encourage my childhood friend Sienna to get the support and help that she needs. I don't want to tear anyone down and only wish healing for everyone involved. I want to thank you, Baba. Okay.
Confirming the tweet, it was the truth, and basically that we're handling it offline now. Sienna posted her own version of the statement.
According to Jack, anyway, friends fight and relationships sometimes change, but so Sienna's a friend, but allegations of a criminal act are not to be thrown around loosely. Making an untrue sexual assault claim is never okay. I'm beyond saddened by the situation in order. So it sounds like Sienna is denying the sexual assault claim.
Statement and said she was going to handle it offline. After that, she basically posted an 8-minute video invalidating my feelings, saying untrue stuff about me, about my friend and my brother. I think the most hurtful thing is that what she did to me, she said it was untrue. That hurt a lot. After that video, another one of my friends came out with a video when I was at a party.
He is showing a video of some video that was posted.
Passed out on the couch. When they told me about what happened, they said they pulled her off of me. My twin, a friend, and another friend got in an argument with Sienna saying, you can't do that. Jack doesn't like you like that.
Okay, so a little bit more detail. That someone took a video of Jack passed out from alcohol or just tired or something. And Sienna was on top of him. I couldn't really see details beyond that. They're saying Sienna shouldn't do that because he's passed out. It's non-consensual. Is that the sexual assault they're talking about?
That night she posted a 15-part aggressive video gaslighting everything about what happened, how much she loved me, and that I was using her for clout, which was all lies. It was typical gaslighting to a victim. It was, why didn't you stop hanging out with me? Why didn't you tell me in the first place? Someone who explained it perfectly is this guy on TikTok. He posted a video and it was just, he explained oh my God. He explained everything perfectly.
It's a trauma that you have to process, and sometimes you have to process it alone because an entire society is against you as a man. Sienna, I've watched the video exactly of what happened, the video evidence that I've seen over and over and over again, and you say his hand moves. His hand moves because it falls off of his friend's back. Your hand is on his...
It sounds like what's happening is that for Jack, there was this video and Jack felt hurt by it and harmed by it, assaulted by that. He's passed out and someone is touching him in ways that he doesn't want to be touched, and he's entitled absolutely to that complaint. It sounds like Sienna was defending herself, I don't know, by saying, look, he was awake. So if I was to take a guess, I would say that they were all intoxicated. Sienna did something that was wrong. and the next day was criticized for it. And instead of saying, "Oh my God, you're right. That's terrible. I should not have done that. I didn't mean it, but I'm sorry. It's awful. I should never have done that. Jack, I'm so sorry I did that. I'll never do it again. That was so dumb of me. I'm not going to blame the alcohol, but I was drunk, and yeah, you're right. It was terrible." Just say something. But in today's world, a lot of people don't do that, or maybe they never did. And then I'm guessing that Sienna got defensive and said, no, he was awake. And then there was a backlash on that saying, and then this fella chimes in by saying his hand moves, not as an evidence because he's awake, but because he's so passed out that his hand just sort of flops off. I think that's what we're seeing right now.
His crotch. It is not on his upper thigh. He was unconscious. You did a bad thing, and I know you're trying to right it in every way you can because of the account that you have and the following that you have and the life that you're currently living, but I need you to just do us all a favor and admit what you did was wrong.
Is there a notion out there that you can't sexually assault a boy or a man? Yeah, there is. That's a problem in our society. From Jack's tears, it looks like he might have felt differently about that it really was hurtful to him and really was violating to him, because of course it would. Why would it not?
I don't care how touchy-feely your relationship was prior to or after that moment, but just know that he did not speak up and he did not act any different because he knew a society would be against him as it is. And now that everybody's seen the truth, you just attacked in a way that is supposed to be an apology or a righting.
This individual is, I think, claiming that Sienna was claiming that as an excuse. She was like, we had a touchy-feely friendship, and so you don't understand, like that kind of stuff is okay. No. If someone's passed out, that doesn't give you rights suddenly to their bodies. There is a movement, a small movement of men stepping forward, and it's kind of like a Me Too for men in a sense. Originally, the Me Too movement was not just for women. There's a growing movement, which is a good thing, of men speaking out about being victimized by sexual abusers, regardless of the gender of the perpetrator. There's a lot of pushback on those men speaking up. There's an anger and a pain around that of just like, not only was I victimized, but now I'm being victim shamed by everyone. And of course, people of all genders experience this, so it's not like this is only men. It's just perhaps more so for men around this, but it's not like, and victims in general. That's why we needed the Me Too movement, so that victims could come forward and not incur some ridiculous consequence from society and the justice system. But anyway, so there's a movement right now of men, and it's been growing over the past 10 or 20 years. And I don't know if that's a part of this, but when we find a moment where it's like, well, wait, this is actually what we've been talking about, and you speak out about it, and you get that pushback, and you get that denial, and you get those consequences. You get these things. Oh, she didn't do that to you. You're a guy. You were fine. You were past. She didn't touch you down there. That kind of denial, victim blaming. That could hurt even more. And you could say, no, I'm drawing a line in the sand. No, it's on video. Look at what happened. If the genders were reversed, everyone would be freaking out. It's not okay. And this stuff happens. So absolutely, there's a massive amount of wisdom to that. And we need to continue to work our way down that road and of raising awareness and changing all of our brainwashing of like, boys can't be sexually abused. I'm guessing that is a part of this conversation.
The wrong. What you're doing is manipulating right now. Any sane person knows that they wouldn't have to go on multiple platforms to post something like this, and they wouldn't be getting angry in the videos that are supposed to be addressing and apologizing. I know you've got a lot to lose, and I know you've got a lot to live for, but here's the truth. You getting worked up because people are trying to get the truth out of you does not make it right to get shitty in a video. Just know that the truth will prevail, and your bullshit lies will come out.
I think his video was one of the reasons why I was okay and was able to not come out with like an aggressive statement like her. I was able just to, I knew the truth. I knew what she did to me.
Oh, my heart breaks. He was a victim and he feels violated, I'm guessing. He feels hurt, betrayed by his friend. Then when he came forward, he felt rejected and his term gaslit, in terms of like, no, I didn't do anything wrong with you. You're the problem, that kind of message. And then he felt hurt by that. He wanted to come back with more defensiveness and more hostility, but then this other video comes out validating, supporting him.
Sienna and I met 4 years ago in high school, she was dating my good friend. And basically it did not turn out well. She cheated on him 2 times, and it kind of like created this whole problem in our friend group. I'm the type of guy that's all for like second chances with people, and I always try to see the good in people. I was in the high.
This video comes out and it validated me, and it made me feel like, oh, okay, I'm not crazy. My feelings are valid. My reaction is valid. Now that I feel validated, I don't feel the need to be hostile online anymore. So I'm gonna refrain from that.
I've been wanting to talk about it for a long time. So the first incident where Sienna crossed boundaries, it was after filming. We went into the room. I was just chilling on my phone on the bed, and she got naked, like completely naked, nothing on, and straddled me when I was literally just chilling on the bed. But I didn't know what to do in like the situation because it was just like random and weird. Quickly told her, Sienna, get off. We're just friends. Stop.
What he's saying is that, according to him, the allegation is that she stripped naked and straddled him, which is absolutely not okay. Under most definitions of sexual assault, that's an assault. And it's easy to ask, would you like to make out? Do you like me that way? Would you like me to get naked? Like, it's pretty easy. It's pretty rare that someone does something like that without, having a pretty good idea of consent to do such a thing. That sounds awful. And he claims that he immediately said, get off me. It's not okay. Yikes.
They're trying to make out with me. They're like just doing a bunch of things to me. And I kept on saying, Sienna, stop, get off. I didn't want to be aggressive. I didn't want to hurt her, So I pulled her off of me.
Wow. And that's often the case. Abusers will, I don't know, Sienna, I don't know, Jack, I don't know what happened, but I'll say from my experience as a therapist that when abusers are abusing, they either subconsciously or consciously know that they can use the victim's politeness as a tool, because most people aren't used to quickly saying, no, get off, which would be appropriate to the situation. Like someone aggressively gets on top of you naked, I think, have the right to absolutely do everything within your power, within reason, to get angry and to shove them off and say no and walk out of the room. But we're trained to be polite, especially some individuals, right? Most people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, and that can be a tool of the abuser.
And it took a couple tries because I didn't want to be too rough, and I went out of the room, and that was the end of it. The next morning, where she was like, I'm so sorry for doing that. That was, I don't know what went through my head. I had to clarify again that I didn't like her that way. We were just friends. She said sorry. That was it.
According to him, she apologized. Was it a commensurate apology? I don't know.
These type of things kept happening. She would do something and I would forgive her, and she said it wouldn't happen again, and we would go on and making fun videos. After all those type of things kept on happening, the Hawaii incident happened where I was passed out unconscious almost the whole night. She got on top of me, took advantage of me, groped me.
Groped him. Okay, we didn't see that bit. So the little bit that I saw, he was passed out on a couch and she was on top of him, kind of straddling him, and someone else, there's another person next to her. He's saying that, there's evidence of her groping him. He's also claiming that repeatedly, multiple times, she would get aggressive sexually with him, and he kept asserting himself, saying, no, I don't want to do that. So I don't know about Sienna, but I will say there are various different psychological profiles that will lead to that behavior. Some people are psychopathic. They are antisocial, what the internet and what some people in my field will call sociopaths. These individuals are characterized by lacking empathy, and they just don't care, and other humans are seen as objects for their own gratification. Then you have sadistic personality disorder. It's not in the DSM, but it is something that we talk about in the literature. People that take pleasure in harming other people. There's a Venn diagram of psychopaths and sadists. not all sadists are psychopaths, and not all psychopaths are sadists. In fact, many psychopaths are not sadists. Not many sadists are not psychopaths, if that makes any sense. So that's another condition. This can be partially genetic. It's often part of the way you're raised. You're often modeled psychopathic behavior or sadistic behavior when you're young, or rewarded for it, or you needed to resort to it for some sense of power or something like that. That's one profile. These people, another path to that behavior is that's what was modeled to you, that you might have even been a victim of those crimes. And one of the ways that you cope with that, so you're not a psychopath, you're not a sadist, and you're being victimized, or you're watching other people being victimized, and it's very painful and very confusing to you as a child. And the way that you deal with it, one of the ways available is to identify with the abuser, because these bad things are happening, you're powerless over it, you can't say no, or you have no power to be safe. And so one of the ways you can cope with it is to say that it's okay, that this behavior is okay, because then it's painful, but it's a little less painful because you're just like, well, this is normal life. And so you kind of make this deal with the devil where you internalize the abuser, which means that you might actually start abusing other people because you had to make this deal with the devil in order to cope with the fact that you're being victimized. So it's another path to adult victimization of others. Other paths could be other personality defenses that are based on early childhood relational traumas that result in your needing to show off and shock other people. You're frequently on camera or something, and you've been told by culture that this is how you can assert your dominance, or this is okay, or this is how you get clicks or something. You know, there's other paths to that kind of repetitive victimization of others. He was seemingly an ongoing victim of someone else's abuse, according to what he's saying.
I'm so glad they pulled her off of me, and honestly, I'm glad that they have evidence. After Sienna found out about the video, she said sorry. She said if this got out, she would be done, that it's horrible, and
she, according to him, apologized and acknowledged that if it got out, she'd be done. Okay, but if you repeatedly did it, what's going on there? Is it a compulsion? Because, you know, I've had clients, and I've even had people in my personal life who had been abused growing up and had this compulsive abusive behavior, particularly when they were drinking. It would come out of them. And they would have emerging self-awareness around that. You know, when they're younger, they would still make excuses. They might still apologize, but they'd make excuses. The older they got, the more therapy they got, they'd be like, oh, this is terrible. I'm acting out what happened to me when I was growing. Again, I don't know if that's Sienna's situation, but we're hearing about just repetitive and then repetitive apologies. Does that mean she meant it when she was apologizing, or was she just saying that?
She's working on boundaries, and she was seeking therapy, and shortly after, there was a party. I was taking pictures with a couple other girls. We took a picture. Sienna came in, started screaming at me, got mad at the girls, told me to come to her room to talk to me. She started screaming at me, and I was like, Sienna, there's no reason for you to be mad when you're getting with other guys.
Another path, being relationally traumatized growing up, this is part of that category that I sort of amorphously discussed earlier, where you feel abandoned, you feel unworthy, you feel like you can't trust others. And then in your relationships, you just have this ongoing anxiety that you're going to be abandoned and left by other people. And you might have this really deep need to connect and to feel attachment security. And you might resort to things like unwanted touching, unwanted grasping of the other person physically or emotionally, because you're so focused on your own needs that it eclipses your ability to detect, like, is this okay with the other person? And then when that person starts to date other people, you get real jealous because you just have this assumption like that's a threat and I need this relationship so bad, and I'm unaware of what's happening, and I'm hurt and I'm angry and I'm going to be hostile and controlling. That's another path.
LA, I can't just take a simple picture with a couple girls. That's when she pulled me in and grabbed me and tried to make out with me, and I got pissed and told her to leave. I wanted to stay at the party, and she kind of had already been yelling at every single person in the party. So two friends wanted to take her home, and while the car was moving, she jumped out of the car, rolled, and said, I have to get back to Jack. So I ran back to the house, and I was like hiding from her.
Okay, I don't know, but I've seen profiles similar to this, And these individuals often have pretty significant relational traumas growing up that they're acting out. And when you add alcohol to the mix and chaotic young people style relationships, you can see this kind of behavior, this erratic behavior where there's this drunken desperation, like, please love me, and irrationality around that issue. And just you regress to this place where you cannot see the woods for the trees, and you do incredibly embarrassing and hurtful and potentially abusive things.
And I was just waiting for her parents to finally pick her up. Looking back now, I don't know why I stayed friends with her, stayed around her. I truly thought she was gonna change for some reason. I feel like she'd say she has so much love for me and that she truly cared for me, and then the next night she would do something like that. She knew I...
Now, I want to say, for the record, as I always say in all the reaction videos that I do, Sienna could come out and say, no, you understand, he was doing that to me. And then I'd be like, huh, and then maybe she has evidence, I don't know. And that's for them in their private lives to figure out for themselves. But I always use these things as a jumping off point because I want you to think about your own life. A lot of these things, we might be able to resonate, they resonate with us. So when you think about being victimized, or you think about your own emotional reactivity and how you might invade other people's boundaries on a number of levels, and then feel bad about it, but not really know the path forward so that you don't do that anymore. Therapy is often involved. I don't know if I showed the clip, but he mentioned that she was going to therapy. Who knows what that involved? But so think about yourself. Think about your own boundaries, your own needs. Maybe that's what we can do. If we could go back in time, I'm guessing Jack would have appreciated someone pulling him aside and saying, how do you feel about your friend and the boundaries and your own needs? Do you feel like you're really being heard? Do you feel like you're being respected? Do you feel like this other person, although maybe they're nice sometimes, other times they just completely throw out your needs and just do things that are harmful to you? Do you feel gender-wise that you have the right to be able to stand up and say, I'm not going to stand for this. This isn't okay. My body is mine, and you can't do things to it. Like, the repetitive nature of this means that I like you as a friend, but I just can't be around you anymore because you keep doing this sort of stuff to me. We can think about ourselves. Are we in Jack's shoes prior to this moment, being victimized by someone in our life right now without feeling like we have the right to say no and to draw very firm boundaries before things blow up, and become out of control?
From her, and especially with like the past couple of things she did, I didn't want anything to do with that. Over the next couple of months, I was stuck in this toxic cycle. I was stuck with her crying to all my friends, saying that I didn't like her back, and why don't I like her back, and she would get mad at me. So again, jumping off point, we can generalize this to a lot of different individuals, and that regardless of gender, when we have relational traumas that make us desperate for closeness, and we identify someone that we feel safe with, that we want to be our attachment figure, there's a rupture or a risk of losing that person, then we will get desperate. And again, as I was saying earlier, we'll become blind to other people's needs because we're all consumed with our own needs. It doesn't make it okay, but this is what happens a lot to perpetrators of abuse. There's a notion that perpetrators are evil, and sometimes they are. Sometimes evil. They're psychopathic sadists, like I was talking about earlier, in that they just take pleasure in harming other people. They have no empathy. But for most of I have treated perpetrators in my career, and I'll tell you that the majority of the perpetrators I worked with were not psychopathic, they weren't sociopathic, they weren't antisocial. These individuals were massively relationally traumatized. They might have a different personality disorder, one that has to do with relational traumas and feeling attachment insecurity, and all consumed wounds that are being triggered frequently, and highly reactive, and behavior that is unkind to other people because, again, they're just so desperate. And then it becomes abusive, it becomes aggressive, it becomes hurtful to other people because you're trying to control, or you're just trying to get your needs met. Does not make it okay.
So in the classic abusive relationship, you have, it's all, it's the classic version, it's a man, and he's, 35 years old, and he has a wife, heterosexual, and he has kids. And the wife comes home late from work or goes out drinking with her friends, and he is fuming at home. She gets home and he beats her. And the classic conceptualization of that, the layperson's conceptualization of that, is he's evil. He's an abusive, evil human being. But when I would treat these individuals, I would find that they generally, going way back, had these emotional wounds that would manifest in deep, deep, deep pain when there's any indication or risk of losing your partner leaving you, even though it's not rational to see it that way, but humans are not rational things. We're not computers. And so you get that indication, oh, she's late. Might she leave me? Is she cheating on me right now? Those thoughts get in your head, and they build and they build, and the pain and the pain and the pain. And the way I cope with it is to get controlling and to attack and to, make sure this person doesn't leave me. And when she gets home, I'm going to let her have it. And I'm going to call all her friends and say, stay away from my wife. And I'm going to make sure she never leaves the house again. And I'm going to break her down emotionally so that she doesn't leave me, because I'm trying to retain this attachment. It doesn't make it okay. And I'm not saying you're supposed to have sympathy for these individuals, but it does conceptualize, it does give us a path of treatment. Because if we just label them as evil, then really the only answer is to put them in prison, because evil is evil, right? But if we have some way to treat these individuals, as I did with perpetrators. So are we seeing that right now? I don't know.
For not caring about her as much as she cared about for me, but she'd also be doing these things to me. I would go see other guys in LA. So it was like, couldn't win at all. I couldn't get out of this. She would constantly come to my house, remember my door codes. It got to the point where I had to start screaming at her to get out of my house, because I was so sick of her just.
Wow. So now we're hearing stalking. Is this all his allegation? Who knows what's true or not? But using it as a jumping off point, stalking behaviors are very common. There's different degrees, right, of stalking. There's stalking for one night. There's stalking for 5 years. But it is not okay. And sometimes it can be really normalized. People will say well, if he's not going to answer your phone call, then you just go over to his house and you tell him what's what. And it's no, not okay. Because of the fear that you'll inject into someone. I know where you live, and if you don't obey me, I'm going to come to your house at will, and you don't know what I'm going to do. And if I'm capable of bursting into your door and screaming, you don't know if I'm going to get a gun. You don't know if I'm going to hire someone to kill you. You don't know if I'm going to push you off a cliff when I get it. It sends this message, it's all in the implication. And maybe it's not intentional, but it sure does affect people. If you've ever been a victim of stalking, it is terrifying. You just don't know what they're going to do. And you can't call the police. The police aren't going to help you typically, because they'll say, well, has a crime been committed? It's well, they keep texting me. Have they threatened you? Well, not explicitly. Well, then don't call us. It's often the case. And so you're just left to be terrified at home, So not okay. Not okay. And often motivated by those relational traumas that I was talking about. Not always, but often.
Breaking into my house. I would wake up and see her car just sitting outside at 2 a.m. She would break into my house, and when I was sound asleep, she'd come into my room, and I'd wake up to her hand in my pants, and it wasn't
Wow, I mean, it was bad already if I took his allegations as truth, but even if it's remotely close to that, what? I mean, that is high crime. I mean, we were talking about potential crimes. Whoa. He's saying that she broke into his house while he was sleeping, goes into his room, and sexually assaults him. After repeated messages from him around, stay away from me, get away from me, don't touch me. Wow. That is awful. I mean, I hope he called the police. That's a police matter. Have the police been called?
The only time it happened too. I was so used to it. I was so used to it that I don't know, it was just normal for me.
I don't know about them. I don't know about Jack and Sienna, but people who are repeatedly victimized, even by repeated perpetrators, it does become normal. And because like I was saying earlier, there's ways of coping. And one of the ways of coping with powerlessness is just to convince yourself, well, this is the way it is. This is or I deserved it. Or, relationships are weird. You make these excuses because you're powerless. You keep saying, as he's telling us, I kept saying no. I kept telling her stop it, but it just kept happening. And I'm trying to be polite. I'm trying to be nice, particularly when he still wanted her as a friend, that you just eventually start saying to yourself, well, I guess this is just life. Things happen sometimes, right? Because it's a way of coping.
I didn't think there was such like a problem at all. Like part of me wants to blame myself for being nice and sticking.
It just breaks your heart. I mean, I can't tell you how many clients I've heard say that it's just like, well, maybe I was too nice. Maybe I should have said something earlier. No, it is never your fault. It is never your fault. It is never your fault. Even if you were extremely nice, even if you kept being friends with them or stayed in a relationship with them, that gives the other person no right to abuse you. Make no doubt about it. Everyone understands that you cannot violate someone's body. Everyone understands that. That's something that we learn when we're like literally 18 months old. It is a fundamental, universal, understood thing, unless there is something seriously wrong with your cognitive processing, which some people have, but that's pretty rare. You are never to blame, even if you were nice, even if you stayed in a relationship, even if you wore a particular outfit, even if you did make out with them the previous night, and the next night you're like, I don't want to do this. It is never your fault. And of course, this is what gets underneath people's skin. And it breaks my heart that he's saying that. And it breaks my heart that young people are still thinking that way, because we've been working so hard, but apparently we have failed. And of course, victim blaming, these ideas, they don't change overnight. And for every Jack, there's millions of others that are blaming themselves for being victimized. And it just breaks my heart. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that. Not only from clients, but from friends of mine, from students of mine, from trainees and supervisees of mine, who will, have these narratives. Even though they're therapists, they know that victim blaming and self-blaming is a thing. It's so insidious. It gets under your skin. It's just like, well, I should have done. It's like, no. Even if you thought you were a couple, to break into someone's house while they're sleeping, go into their room and sexually grab them. That's like so out of touch with like what's moral and okay. So no, Jack, it is not your fault. Don't blame yourself. Enough people are going to do that for you. Don't blame yourself.
Around after so many times, but now I realize that I was stuck in this like manipulative cycle of her acting like she extremely cared about me, and then that night she would do stuff to me, and it was just so normal for me. I got used to it, which sucks. I feel like no one should have to go through. It's weird. I almost felt like I owed it to her for some reason. I don't know why. Like I felt like,
yeah. The more I hear, the more it sounds legit. I don't know, of course. This is a lot of emotional detail that you would have to make to make. There's so many markers of the syndrome of ongoing victimization, the self-blame, the normalization, the feeling like you owe the person. Abusers will do that to you. Again, sometimes it's conscious, and sometimes it's almost always characterized online as a conscious thing. That malignant narcissism, they wake up in the morning, ha 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 ha. And like I said, there are people that are like that, psychopaths, sadists. They often will wake up in the morning and go like, how am I going to get someone today? But the vast majority of perpetrators, it's a product of their desperation. And maybe they kind of know that they're doing it to other people, but that's not the mission. The mission is they're trying to, in a very broken, ugly, criminal way, trying to get their attachment needs met. They're ruining their lives in the process, and they're, of course, pushing everyone away from them. But they were taught that, or they were rewarded for it growing up, or something, that they continue to relate to the victim in a way that will pressure the victim into feeling like the victim owes them. Hey, you owe me. And they'll like an example. I don't know if Sienna did anything like this, but when the victim needs something, the perpetrator will be there. Will drive him to the hospital or bail him out with money or something. And they might even isolate the victim from other people such that there's not a lot of people to support that. So, a lot of the support comes from the perpetrator. You, as the perpetrator, because you're so attachment insecure and you have this system, either conscious or unconscious, you start cataloging those things that you did for the victim. And then when there's any kind of pushback, you're like, well, remember that thing I did for you? You reached out for me, and who was there for you? It's normal to do that as a human being, but it's particularly insidious as a part of the system of abuse.
She had this like control, like this power over me. It was all, I don't know. I was like stuck. And I feel like you should never have to like worry about like falling asleep and waking up.
Wow. I mean, this is terrible. And again, I hope that he's okay. I hope he has support. I pray to God that the internet is not attacked. Really, either one of these individuals. I mean, if she is a perpetrator, she's probably young too. She's on a path, and I would hate for the internet to interfere with her recovery from whatever she needs to recover from, but especially for him. I hope he's doing okay. What I would hope for him is that he has close people in his life that have nothing to do with the internet, are, really there for him. I hope that he can get safe, and I hope that he goes to a therapist. He's exhibiting all the signs. He's saying those things of, I can't sleep at night, or I worry when I go to sleep at night. Because one of the things that can happen is, even though, let's say, she moves across the world or she's locked up or something, it doesn't take away the neurological terror, because the body doesn't necessarily know that the perpetrator is behind bars or something. The body is just like been altered, and you might have trouble sleeping. You might get depressed. You might be in a constant state of anxiety. And he's exhibiting some of that, which would make sense given what his claims are regarding the ongoing nature, not only of the sexual assaults, but also the emotional insidiousness of the abusive relationship.
To one of your good friends, like, touching you, I was like terrified for some reason, which you shouldn't be from like a person. One night she started ripping. Yeah,
so I don't know, again, when victims of this kind of abuse will talk, they'll often say things like that. It was like, for some reason, I felt utterly terrified, like a fight or flight reaction. But when I think about it, it wasn't like I don't think my life was in danger. Why did I feel that way? The reason why people feel that way, and I've been through this personally myself, is when a perpetrator is doing things to you, that is, we tend to trust if you come from a good enough background, you tend to trust other people not to cross certain lines. And there are a lot of lines that we have, and we don't notice them because rarely do people cross those lines. But as soon as a line is crossed repeatedly, even if it's not life-threatening, like sexual, unwanted sexual touching, without stopping, and when you apologize, not really stopping later on, just night after night, you start questioning, wait, so I can't depend, because the thing that I like, the way I like to think about it is that when we walk down the street or when we're driving to work, we don't necessarily consciously register this, but we depend on everyone to follow certain social rules, depending on the culture you're in. Like when you're on the highway, you expect that people will not just completely out of nowhere change lanes and try to run you over. Or when you go to work, you expect that people are going to wear clothes. There are all these little rules that we expect people to follow, and when people don't follow the rules, any one of those thousands and thousands of rules, then all bets are off. Then we're like, well, if they're not going to follow that convention, then I can't depend on them to not kill me. Because if they're capable of that, are they capable of killing me? And this is something that will confuse victims, is they'll feel like, I don't understand why I feel like my life is in danger. They never threatened my life, but it feels that way to me. I feel like my life is in danger. Because if someone is willing to repeatedly violate your body, if someone is willing to repeatedly invade your house without consent, if they are going to apologize and then continue to do it, and you keep pleading with them and they keep like denying it, then you start wondering, well, what else are they capable of? I mean, am I gonna wake up dead one day? I mean, this is an absolute natural, it's in, as I was saying earlier, it's like, if someone is willing to text you 500 times a day, just going like, answer, 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 they're not respecting a norm in our society. And they have a lot of energy behind that they want you, but they're angry at you. And so it's a very natural conclusion to think, are they going to kill me? Or are they going to cut off a limb or something? Are they going to make an allegation to the police and I'm going to go to jail for 5 years? Like, those are legit logical concerns. And so I don't know if that's what he was going through, but it had that hint.
Taking off my clothes, touching my crotch area, trying to make out with me. I mean, it was just like same old, same old. Like, I'd say, Sienna, stop, go back to the couch, Sienna, stop. So I like locked the door, she was trying to get in, and I literally just slept on the floor, and she finally went to bed. It's like very awkward the next morning, and she'll say sorry, and I'm like, Sienna, this happens so many times. Like, you do not respect boundaries. You just, oh my God. So my dad was born and raised in Hawaii.
So one of the confusing aspects of being a victim of this sort of perpetrator is that you're getting this message that the person loves you and wants you. And it's confusing to the victim because it's like, well, this person, it's nice when people love me. It's nice when people like me. It's nice when people want to be, especially if you have some self-esteem issues and some abandonment issues yourself, you're just like, wow, this person really needs me. That kind of feels nice. That kind of feels good. But I'm terrified of them. So, and they don't respect my boundaries all the time. So what do I do? You know, it's hard to navigate that. And especially if you're polite and you've been taught to, if someone wants you, that you should let people down easy, that you should say, hey, you know, I don't. But when someone crosses a line into abuse and assault, politeness should go out the door. And we need to be teaching, apparently we need to be teaching young people that message, which it breaks my heart that he was abused, according to him, for so long and was trying to be nice and trying to nicely be nice and continually being hurt, putting his own needs on the back burner. It's heartbreaking.
This cycle is never gonna end. It's like, it's gonna be like this forever. That's what it felt like. She was always gonna make her way back towards me. She wasn't respecting my space at all. She knew I wanted my space. There's another time I went to Hawaii with a couple friends for like my trip, and she kind of found a way to get on that trip. And we went to a party one night. She got mad that I was talking to some girls, and she took me into the bathroom to talk to me, saying that she wanted to leave. She was blocking the door, so like I couldn't just like throw her out of the way.
Yeah, wow. Just classic abusive behavior. I don't know where it comes from with Sienna, but I've treated a lot of people on both sides of this equation, and blocking, getting jealous, following someone around, always wanting to be with them, and feeling entitled. One of the elements and components of the abusive individual often is a feeling of entitlement over someone else's body, over someone else's time, over someone else's sexuality or romantic life or something. And it's this feeling of, I need this person. Again, if it comes from that relational trauma place, so it starts with, I need this person, I need this person, I need this person. And what a lot of people will do is they'll say, but they don't like me, and so that sucks, and I'm in pain. And so I'll cry and I'll find support and go to therapy or something. But if you believe you're entitled to someone else, that it's like, well, he's just going to have to deal with the fact that I'm into him, and this is just how he's mine. He doesn't understand it yet, but he will. Eventually he'll get it, that him and I are meant to be together, and that's just the way that it is. Sometimes that's the attitude. And it sounds ridiculous, right? But why else would you do this kind of behavior? Blocking someone, and often it's modeled. Like I said, often the behavior, they observed it. It was done to them, or they saw it done between their parents or something, that it would be okay when you're frustrated with someone to not let them out of the room. And not okay. Oh, not okay. Oh, boy.
All I had was, stop, Sienna, don't do that. If I come out, she will like scream at me in front of everyone and think that I did something. I mean, I feel like no one believes a male.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And heart breaks for him and all the other males who have been victimized in this way and have had no support. In fact, laughter. Ha ha ha. What kind of man are you? You know, that you have, what are you, some kind of weak wimp or something? Yeah, just a massively pervasive ridiculousness in our society that absolutely just has to stop. It's just so destructive and so stupid and illogical. And so there's that. The other thing that can happen sometimes, and I don't know about Jack, doesn't sound like it. He did this, but what can happen naturally is if, you know, someone's blocking your way out of a room, or there's break-ins to your house, eventually you just lose it, right? You're trying to be polite, you're trying to say no, and then eventually, as a victim, you just lose control of your behavior, and you maybe get violent back, and then the police are called and you go to jail. That happens sometimes, absolutely.
Especially in like that type of situation. But yeah, she was on the counter and wrapped her legs around me and started like, let me out of the bathroom. Yeah, just weird stuff. That night we went home.
About violence, I never recommend violence as a victim. Go to a therapist, get connected with support systems. There are domestic violence advocacy groups, you know, the hotline, just type in domestic violence hotline on the internet. You can get connected with someone that might be able to route you to support that can really help you get through these situations, so you don't have to resort to that kind of thing. So he's talking about how he's trying to leave and basically giving this threat, this implication that if you don't do what I say right now, I'm going to lose my stuff at this party, and then you will be implicated in this. And so he's trying to be nice, who knows, but his story is that he's trying to be nice, and then she grabs him and so there's a possibility, but when victims are in this situation, they sometimes just put themselves in the back burner. It's like, okay, just please the person. When we are faced with threat, we fight, flight, freeze, appease, or faint. You can fight, you can run. He couldn't do either of those very, effectively because she was blocking the door, and she was potentially making an implication of a threat that if he leaves, she'll claim something and then he'll get in trouble. Or you can freeze and just wait for it to be over, or you can appease. You can just say, okay, well, what do you need? How can I make her happy without completely giving myself up, so that I can just slowly extricate myself? And sometimes that works, but sometimes it doesn't. In fact, a lot of perpetrators depend on the appease part of our response to continue to abuse us, because that appease part gives them full control and can also give them an excuse. It's like, so you might appease and say, okay, fine, we'll make out for a little bit. I might even act like I like it, even though I don't, even though on the inside I'm terrified. By the way, trigger warning, this whole video. And you go along with it, and then later on you claim, you start telling people, look, this person has been abusing me, and there's a picture of you making out with the person. It's like, oh, you're lying, you led her on, or you're just making that up. And all the while, you were just a victim appeasing an abuser, and you were terrified. So things don't always look as they appear.
Different rooms to stay in. And I got in the shower, and she picked the lock of my door I made sure to lock the doors, but she picked the lock.
Wow. I mean, if half of this is true, wow. Criminal. I thought what I'd be reacting to was just that video that we saw at the beginning of this, that was what all the hubbub was about, was just this one video. No, we're hearing it would be hard to make up this story. Could someone make it up? Yeah. But it would be hard. It would be really hard. And plus, victims know, regardless of gender, but particularly men, but really regardless of gender, that to come forward means you will be piled on. You will be abused by the world or the justice system or something. So for him to come forward and talk about this stuff, because I don't know what kind of content he makes. I'm just going to take a guess and say that he makes fun content and not like heavily emotional content. And so this might be a real departure from his normal content. He might worry about alienating his viewership, or I don't know, who knows. But there's a lot of negative consequences coming forward. And so when people do come forward, it's important that we take all that into account when we try to determine the validity and the truthfulness of what they're saying. Can we just know that based on this account? No. But at the very least, we should say, well, what should we say as a society? Well, I'll say what I do, which is that I'm going to say what I've said, which is in support of victims and possibly Jack, if he is a victim. He certainly sounds like one. He certainly sounds like a legit, because again, even if half of this is true, he's absolutely been victimized. But I'll also lend my support to Sienna. I don't know her. I'm only hearing this account from him. But I've worked with Siennas. I've worked with these individuals, and they're often hurting. It doesn't justify the behavior, but if we're going to improve on things for everyone involved, including everyone that will be in a relationship with Sienna for the rest of her life, then we have to reach out to them. We have to help them. We have to determine where it's coming from. Even if it's psychopathic, honestly. I've worked with psychopaths who are trying to change their life, and I've helped them. They still lack empathy, but we can work with that. I've worked with people like that. It's not easy, and a lot of psychopaths don't want the help. But the point is that that's my reaction. Is I don't know how old they are. They seem pretty young. I don't know how old Sienna is. Seem pretty young, and my heart goes out really to both of them, and that's my reaction. As a society, I think that should be part of the reaction, personally. But what do I know? And
walked in, I was in the shower, all I heard was just like the door opening, and that's when I was just done. I screamed at her, told her to get out. She started crying. She went and slept in my bed, and I went to my friend's trundle bed that was like upstairs.
Yeah, so we're hearing about another massive criminal violation and assault. Just a pattern of victimization and abuse. Just awful. And if you're him, it's going to be a lot to recover from. I mean, that is just a lot to, because you start thinking, am I worth it? Do I have the ability to say no to things? Can I trust anyone?
And that's how the night ended. So now we're caught up to when everything went public, when Mason posted his tweet. Since everything was brought to social media, multiple guys came out to me and said that Sienna did similar things to them. And basically, I'm sure also.
Okay, so there have been others, which doesn't surprise me. Someone saying that she made him uncomfortable. I was drunk sleeping on a couch and woke up to the homie saying WTF because she had just gotten on top of me and was sleeping on me. She was kissing my neck. Sienna low-key did the same stuff to me at a party. I don't want this to go anywhere, but want to tell you Sienna low-key blanked me when I was hella drunk. Yeah, that's a pattern. That's a personality. That's not a mistake.
I'll show the text right now. I asked all of them for permission to post, crossed out all their names. We don't want her to hurt anybody else. We don't want anyone to go through that experience. At the time, it feels humiliating. You feel like you have no power. You have no no control in the situation. You feel.
Yeah, and it goes against all toxic masculinity that men are supposed to be in control. We're supposed to take things into our own hands. When someone threatens us, we're supposed to threaten them back. We're supposed to protect ourselves. If they bring a knife, we bring a gun. And that's the way the movies always work, and that's the way we're taught by society. But fact is, regardless of what gender you are, if someone wants to victimize you, there's almost nothing you can do. There's not a lot you can do, especially if you're a man being victimized by a woman who is smaller. I don't know, but she looked smaller physically than him. But regardless of physical size, no one's going to listen to you. And sometimes the cops won't listen to you. Justice system won't listen to you. Sometimes they will. So, yeah, you just feel completely untethered. And it's the damage, half the damage that's done by these experiences has to do with the way people react and has to do with the implications about future relationships. Because, this one person has damaged me, and then finally I really just draw this boundary, or I tweet out, and then she knows never to approach me again. Like, a boundary is set. She probably won't even try to attack me anymore because she just knows that it's a minefield. But now I'm dealing with all the bullying online. I'm dealing with the lack of validation. I'm dealing with the giggles from other people. And I'm also wondering who else is going to do this to me, and who am I now? Because for a lot of men, our confidence sometimes generates from toxic masculinity, this idea, because there's a lot of great things about masculinity, and then there's bad things about masculinity. And one of the bad things is this notion that we don't have feelings, that we can't be victimized, that if we're a victim, it's our fault, that we need to always assert ourselves, and violence fixes everything. I mean, 99% of movies, violence always fixes everything. And the hero always prevails physically. Superman, Batman, they assert themselves, and then they win the day. And when we're being victimized repeatedly, and we've been trying to deal with it, and we never solve the problem, we never manage to get that power back, we think, well, I must not be a real man, or I must be weak or something. So this is additional damage because of culture and because of ideas of masculinity, instead of teaching young boys that if you're going to be victimized, you need support, and no one can be a victim alone. You cannot protect yourself from a perpetrator, a determined perpetrator, by yourself. You have to get support, and you have to get support from people that know how to push back on a perpetrator, how to sometimes involve the law.
I don't know, it's horrible. I just want to start off by saying that I didn't stay silent in this situation over these last couple months. I talked to my friends, my family, my parents, counselors, and I was able to process everything. I don't think I'll ever be the same person I was.
Yeah, good that he was able to get support and talk with people, therapists. And then he's saying, I don't think I'm ever going to be the same person. Yeah, it changes you. It is an eye-opener. It makes you somewhat jaded about other people, potentially protective, a little untrusting, maybe less trusting of people. So I feel really bad for him.
Before Sienna, it sucks, and there's going to be people that try to take advantage of you and get you at your most vulnerable state, and that's not fair. That's not fair at all. And it's a lot of the time it's usually like the nice people that like let people walk all over them.
Yeah, just breaks my heart. He's talking about, I used to be a nice person. I tried to be nice to people. At every turn, I tried to be nice, and I was taught that niceness wins the day. That if you are nice to people, they're nice back to you. And then this perpetrator walks right into your life and just destroys you and capitalizes on that niceness. And this is why, unfortunately, we have to teach young people about being nice, but also but there's a limit to that. And there's a different mode that you have to be in with certain individuals. With a lot of people, once you can count on the fact that they're not going to harm you and victimize you, you can be open to them. You can, with my wife, I'm open. I'm nice to her. I'm vulnerable to her because I know she's not going to hurt me. But with other people, I've learned, until I know with them, I'm not that way with them. And I wonder if Jack was raised well and in a nice household and was never taught yes, good, you're nice, that's good. You try to give, you try to be reasonable, you try to be calm, but there's some people that you cannot be that way with because they will capitalize on that.
And that was me. I let everyone just walk all over me, no matter what. I would do anything for anyone, and I think that's one of the things she gave me was I learned how to be more bold and finally say no and know that it was right to speak out.
Yeah, just heartbreaking. He's also saying that he's not phrasing it as being nice. He's phrasing it as being a doormat. And so maybe he took niceness too far, that he would always frequently put himself in the back burner, which is a magnet for abusers. So maybe he's talking about that.
People don't know what you go through until you're in it, and it's definitely humiliating, weird, awkward. I want to be that person that says it's okay. It's okay to speak out. You're not going to be known for that. It's just a little obstacle that you have to get through. It's something you have to get through, and it sucks, but I feel in my situation, I've just learned. You learn from it. I've learned so much from everything. I've grown so much as a person. It's insane. And as of Sienna, I don't know if she'll ever be sorry. I don't know if she'll ever learn from what she did or she'll ever admit to what she did.
She could. I don't know how old she is, and I don't know her path, but I've worked with people who will do the work, and on the other side. So there's maybe I'll say 3 phases to this. The first phase is complete denial because it upholds the pattern. It is, often these behaviors are generated from a deep, deep feeling of worthlessness. And so any kind of shame gets immediately denied because it's too much to bear. And then once they start to recover and start to see it, they have deep, 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 deep shame. And it's really hard for them to talk about it. It's really hard for them to think about it. It's really hard for them to apologize because they go from denial and perhaps narcissism to and they might kind of vacillate between those two. As they're recovering, they start to see it. They start to see the tip of the iceberg. As self-awareness starts to emerge, they open the door ajar a little bit and they just see all these skeletons in their closet and they're just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And they don't have the fortitude yet to be able to look at that. They were abused or neglected growing up. And so it's really hard for them. As recovery, and it can take a long time, it can take decades. And then eventually they recover enough that they can take a deep breath and actually look in that closet. And they have the support, they have the fortitude, they have the differentiation, the maturity, the self-esteem to look at the skeletons in their closet. And then after that, maybe there's a 4th phase where they can actually, apologize and reach out and say, I'm sorry for what I did. Because each step of the way requires a higher level of self-esteem. You need a higher level of self-esteem to even begin to look at that, to have a little bit of self-awareness. You need a higher level of self-esteem to actually look at your shameful past behavior. You need even higher self-esteem to admit it to the victims. So, it's happened, but I wouldn't hold your breath.
I just don't want her to do this to other people. If you've been through a similar situation as me, I encourage you just to speak out to anyone. And trust me, it helps so much
Yeah, I might add to that and say, speak out. You're on your own path when you're speaking out, but you want to eventually get to someone that really knows what they're talking about. You could talk to a friend, and that person might be your friend, but you need a counselor or an adult or someone who really understands how to frame it and how to move forward, how to ask you, what do you want to do about this? How are we going to keep you safe? What do we need to do to keep you safe? That kind of conversation. It's great to have support, but you need people to take action to, preserve your safety and your life and your body.
Say thank you so much for listening to me and letting me take time and breathe and process everything. And I'm glad I'm finally ready to tell the world my story. If you're watching right now and you've been through a situation like mine, I just want to say your feelings are valid.
Yeah, and good for him. He's probably saving a lot of lives, literally, or at very least helping a lot of people. I'm guessing his audience is younger, and more people need to be talking about this. So, he could have not talked about this. He could have just been hostile. He could have done the normal thing of just posting a bunch of hostile things. Instead, he's sharing his experience. This is his Me Too. And he is, if this is all true, which it sounds true, then I'm glad that he was able to put this out there. And I pray to God that he's getting support and not hate.
Your feelings are valid. Your opinion is valid. I believe you, and I want you to know that you can talk to someone. You can talk to anyone. You can talk to me. But that's how I want to end it off. I love you guys.
All right. Tough video to watch. Tough. Thanks for sending it to me. I think it was a good, what do I say? I think it's a shining beacon of how to take care of yourself. Now, do you have to go on YouTube? No. But the ability to stand tall and have emotion and to talk about what happened to you and come forward. The analogy I always give, or the comparative crime I always give, is if someone walked up to you and stabbed a fork into your thigh and drew blood and then wandered off, you'd immediately call the police, or at the very least, you'd immediately tell your friend, oh, that person just stabbed me in the leg. It was out of nowhere, just stabbed me in the leg with a fork. Or if you're walking down the street and you have a bag and someone pushes you down, takes your bag, you immediately call the cops. You immediately tell your friends, someone just mugged me. It was terrible. Most people. But when it comes to sexual assaults from your friends, date rape, then somehow we don't call. We just go, it must be my fault. Why do we do that? Because of society. Because we teach young people and all people that it's their fault. That they're, especially men, that you're weak. You don't talk about those things. I don't want to hear about that kind of stuff. Why, when we're a victim of a crime of a sexual nature, there are people, some of you might have had a crime happen to you repeatedly, and you've literally never told anyone because you've been told not to say anything. And so it's good that he's able to come forward and to lead by example. And, with 20 million views, I'm guessing that, he's really changed some lives. So, good for him. All right. Well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself truly, because you deserve it. You really, really do.